Hello, everybody. This is Mike. Uh, so I don't know why my YouTube, uh, this channel, the streaming scenario on this channel seems to work differently. I don't know why. My other channel, it's very predictable. I know what to do. This one just sort of throws you on live before telling you. It doesn't give you any heads up. Any case, I am going to be talking to you today about the question of love when it comes to borderline personality disorder and dating, marrying, being in love with, having friendship, friends with benefits, whatever weird definition is put on it, because sometimes it gets complicated, right? Um, Whatever it is, when it comes to loving, romantic love with somebody who has borderline personality disorder, what is it that they're talking about when they talk about love? What is it that you mean when you talk about love? What is it that they mean? And why it's so painful and why it's so confusing for both sides. So, we're going to be talking about that. Before I go any further, I need to let you know that I am not a therapist. I am just simply somebody who survived a romantic relationship with somebody whom I believe had very severe, untreated, and undiagnosed borderline personality disorder. And it was devastating to me. It wasn't just a bad relationship, it affected my mental health quite severely. And so I needed to recover. And so I started making videos the beginning of this year, just as I was, when it finally completely, well, when I had an opportunity to close the doors behind me. I had been discarded. And as you know, that doesn't necessarily mean anything because borderlines can come back in 2 weeks and, hoover you, as you know, hoover you back in. But I took the opportunity to close the doors behind me. And then I went to heal myself. And I came to realize that I had been, the way that I described the feeling was, and I'm thinking back now because I'm not feeling that way now because I've done the work to heal myself, which I'll share with you how to do that. But the way that I felt was that I had been like somebody had come in, like Hannibal Lecter had come in with a knife and cut me open and taken out big chunks of me. I just felt like I'd been damaged beyond repair. And I remember even saying, I think it still might even be on some of the videos, those early ones, where I said, I think I'm broken and I don't think I'll ever be able to love again. But that wasn't just it. I mean, that was one symptom. The essence of my experience was that I had been so devalued on the deepest psychological level. I had been so deeply devalued on the deepest level that I it felt like there was like a physical poison in me. I was worried I was going to get some kind of physical disease. I physically felt it. And I was thinking and acting in ways, very extreme ways that I hadn't thought before. I thought I had caught borderline personality disorder. And I laugh about that, but because you really can sort of catch it. Now, you don't become an actual borderline, but you can catch a lot of the thought processes. And bear in mind, if you're a borderline and you're in a relationship and you're perfectly happy and you're able to love, this channel is not for you. If you are a partner of a borderline and everything is wonderful and you guys are married and you guys communicate great and she's in therapy and everything's wonderful, this channel's not for you. So please don't give me any nonsense about I'm stigmatizing and I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who've been through the bad part, who have experienced the really toxic, horrific side of it. So before I continue, let me also just make it very clear. Borderline personality disorder, according to the mental health profession, describes borderline personality disorder as a very serious mental illness. So I am not stigmatizing or judging anybody, because that would mean I was saying that they were bad people and they're evil, bad people. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they have a mental illness. And without treatment, if somebody has a mental illness, then that means that they're going to have some dysfunction when it comes to interfacing with reality. When it comes to borderline personality disorder, I don't know all the things that they have to go through, so because I'm not borderline. I was on the other end of it, so I know, as well as does the rest of, the mental health profession, that borderline personality disorder causes severe trauma in relationships, most specifically in romantic relationships. And so that's what we're talking about here, how to deal with it. So let's talk about love. What love is. When I was with my borderline ex, we had a few conversations where I said to her that love was an action, wasn't a feeling. And she got this look on her face, and she didn't have any idea what I was talking about. She said, "What do you mean?" And I said, just what I said. Love is an action. Love is not a feeling. She said, "No, I don't believe that. I think love is a feeling." This is the same person who, just before she devalued me and discarded me for the last time that I showed up for, she said, "Yeah, I'm checking with my intuition every day to see if we should be dating." Now, on the surface, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I believe in intuition, and I believe that what a lot of people call their intuition is that they're checking in with their deepest awareness. And we can call it intuition if you want to turn it into a magical thing where some other being outside of you is giving you information like God or whatever. I don't care. Because lots of times, we call it our gut, my gut instinct. I had a gut feeling. Well, a lot of times this means that you're tapping into some unconscious, deeply held awareness. And, your body often knows. Like, again, with my borderline ex, I keep forgetting about this, but my body knew going into that relationship, my body knew this was bad news. I mean, I had all kinds of anxiety. I started having physical pain. My knee swelled up. I couldn't walk. I'm thinking about it now. I could barely walk. And when that happens, it means that there's a deep, unresolved, unconscious conflict. My body knew, my instincts knew, this was bad news. Stay away. So I'm okay with people checking in with their intuition. But she would say, "Yes, I'm checking in with my intuition every day to see whether or not we should be dating." So at first glance, that sounded like a healthy thing to do, but I'd been with her for a while and I'd seen what her intuition really meant. And so I said, "What does that mean?" She says, I said, "Explain to me exactly the process so I understand." She says, "Oh, well, I close my eyes and I ask whomever, should I date Mike? And then I get this bad feeling. And I said, "So you do this every day?" She says, "Yeah." And I say, "What happens?" She says, "I close my eyes and I ask the question, I get a bad feeling." Now, I didn't say anything, and to be honest, I didn't say anything because I was hoping that she was going to go ahead and decide to be with me, because I was trapped in the addiction of it all. And even though if I had been in my right mind, I would have said, "What the hell is that? I mean, what does that say about you? You're so insignificant to her that she's only going to decide to date you if she gets a happy feeling. I mean, what does that mean? She ate something good for lunch and she's feeling good that day. She had a bad feeling. So if you have a good feeling today, what happens if you have a bad feeling tomorrow? And you have a bad feeling today, You have a good feeling tomorrow. So does that mean tomorrow she says, I should date Mike because she has a good feeling? When she wakes up the next day and has a bad feeling, she's going to break up with you? Those were the thoughts that were going through my head. But of course, I didn't have the guts to do anything about it because I was so desperate. And, but I forgot what I was saying about that. Anyway, so love. So I was telling her that love is an action, not a feeling. She used to throw the word love around without any problem. I love this person, I love that person, I love this, I love you. She'd throw that out and it meant as much as anything, and she could take that same feeling that she had for me and give it to somebody else. Now, I don't know how true that is. I only know what I saw, and that's what I saw. That's what I experienced. And I know I'm not alone in that. There was a point where she was on medication for anxiety, which was a bad idea for her. But I think because she was with me, it really stimulated, and she wasn't doing a lot of things that she was doing. She wasn't taking drugs or doing crazy things that she used to do to regulate or try and regulate her feelings. She was trying to go, clean and, all that kind of stuff. And so, I believe that being with me and having the intimacy that, we shared, I think that set her off. And so she started taking medication for anxiety, which made her just even loopier. But in a strange way, it helped mitigate the splitting. And I remember at one point, now it didn't mean that she didn't devalue me, because she did. And I want to get detailed about this one incident, but I'm not going to. There was one incident where she devalued me in such a horrible way. And it was just so awful. I actually got up and left. I just said, I can't. This is really hurtful to me what you're doing, and I got to leave. And she had no idea what she had been doing, and she's like got really teary and said, but I love you so much. And I think in that moment, I saw her. Saw the real her for a moment. Because what I hear from borderlines who are on this channel, and I'm grateful, who share their experience. Now, I really listen to the ones who are in therapy. I don't listen to just any borderline. I listen to the ones who have been in therapy for a while, and they'll say that they actually, when it comes to love, a borderline will say, yes, we love desperately. We love so much, it's too overwhelming. We love so much. I'm going to get to that. So I believe in that moment, because she was on medication, she had the ability to be honest in that moment. But again, the problem is, can it translate into loving action? And she was incapable of any long-lasting, consistent loving action. She could, if she was in the right mood, she could be extremely loving in the moment. But it could also go like that. I mean, she would go from being so loving and intimate and nurturing to, I hate you, you're the worst individual I've ever known, you've got to get out of here, you're so horrible to me. And, at the drop of a hat. I mean, in an instant. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. All right, so let's talk about love. Isn't that a song? Let's talk about love. I'm going to give you the definition of love again. Love is an action. Love means that you are not wrapped up in yourself. So just because you have a squishy feeling for somebody does not mean you love them. Because having a squishy feeling and showing affection or saying something nice or doing something loving, let's be honest, you do it because it feels good to you in the moment. I'm not judging it. I mean, it's the best thing in the world. When you're feeling happy and squishy feelings for somebody and you can give that to them and they take it, I mean, there's no better feeling in the world. All the hormones and blah, blah, blah that gets released in the system, who doesn't want to feel that? I mean, that's why we go to, that's why we make love. That's why, we go get massages. That's why we watch, listen to music, is so we can feel good. So I got nothing against that. But let's be honest, that's all that it is. You have a squishy feeling, so you do or you say something nice or loving Great. I'm happy if that makes them feel good. You can say that, you did a loving thing. But that's not love. Love is when you honestly have true empathy for the other person. Now, having empathy for the other person doesn't mean you feel their feelings. So I am talking to both the borderline and the partner of the borderline, or the empath. I'll allow you for this moment to hold on to that title of empath, the codependent. I'm talking to everybody here. Because what I'm saying is that at the root of the toxic relationship with a borderline is that there is no love. That is a fact. And I'm not saying that you don't have loving feelings. So don't think that I'm discounting your feelings. Your feelings are very real. But your feelings themselves are not love. Love is an action that is taken when you have true empathy for somebody else. Empathy does not mean, by the way, empathy is not a feeling either. So for those empaths out there who, when you think of the borderline and you're filled with the desire to caretake, the desire to fix, when your eyes fill with tears about how much you wish you could fix them and help them, when you want to give to them, when you sacrifice for them, all of the feelings behind that is not empathy. Empathy does not mean that you can sense what they're feeling. Here's an interesting thing. I just realized this today. I was thinking about it because I was thinking about that because people still, it won't matter. I'm going to be saying this forever, that people come up and on the channel and they say, "Oh, I'm not a codependent. I'm an empath." And that's the easiest way to get me to just slice you to pieces because that's just such nonsense. On one, before I get into that, why does there have to be one or the other? Why is it you're an empath or you're a codependent? How come you can't be both? In fact, why can't we make, being an empath one of the symptoms of codependence? Let's see, if you're a codependent, first symptom, you're an empath. Okay, fine, you're an empath. Thank you, you're a codependent. But why is it that empaths, those who claim to be empaths and take pride in it and use it as some sort of badge of honor and use it as a way of saying, I'm not a codependent, I'm an empath. Why is it you're only an empath for people who are in pain? That's not what the word means. Empath is, I believe it's a Latin word, and it means to feel within. Literally means to feel what the other person is feeling. But that is not what you think it is. What you think it is that you walk into a room and you all of a sudden have this overwhelming feeling of sadness and you see somebody in the corner and you're like, oh my God, that person needs love. I have to go help them. I'm an empath. That's not empathy. That's you being wrapped up in your narcissism. Empaths / codependents and borderlines are equally narcissistic. When I use the word narcissistic, I'm not talking about the clinical definition of a narcissist. That is a whole different thing. Narcissism means you're wrapped up within yourself. Now, narcissism is a normal thing. I talked about making love. Making love, having sex, is a beautiful expression of dual narcissism, where you have two people who are wrapped up in their own feeling, and the more that you try and get your jollies from whatever you're doing to the other person, that actually gives them jollies also, which makes them want to move in a certain way that makes them happy, which actually makes it happy for you. It's dual narcissism, and it's a beautiful thing. So just because I say you're narcissistic doesn't mean you're a bad person. We wouldn't be able to function if we weren't narcissistic. But being narcissistic is not the same as being a narcissist. But the empath, codependent, and the borderline both are wrapped up in their own narcissism. The empath slash codependent is wrapped up in their narcissistic feeling of needing to take care of the other person. Their sense of self, their worth, their joy comes from fixing the other person. When they walk into the room, the reason why you become aware of, I feel so much sadness in the room, is because when you're surrounded by people, you've been programmed to find the one person that you can fix so that you can have value, because that's how you were programmed as a kid in your family of origin. You were taught that in order to have any value, you had to make sure that crazy, angry, alcoholic daddy didn't, flip out on you. So you had to laugh and be cute and make sure that daddy had a beer next to him. And it's not a badge of honor. It's narcissism. You're trying to preserve yourself. Nothing wrong with that either. It's a very ineffective way to function in normal adult life, but that's what you had to do as a kid. So love is an action of empathy. Empathy means to actually objectively know what the other person needs. You walk in the room and you see a drug addict and they are begging you for a fix, and you can see that they are going through withdrawals. Your empathy says, oh, I'm going to go out and buy heroin for them and give it to them because I'm an empath, because I care about them. I don't want them to feel bad. Well, that's not true empathy, because you're not knowing what they actually need. So let's get rid of the whole idea that being an empath means that you know what somebody needs. It's nonsense. You don't have the first clue what they need. You're just trying to make yourself feel better by easing their discomfort. You're made uncomfortable by other people's discomfort. So to make yourself feel better, you fix them. That's not empathy. So when I say true love is to have real empathy, it means to empathize with the other person and know what it is they truly need, whether that makes you or them happy. Whether that means by you giving them what they truly need, they're going to turn around and hate you forever. A true empath goes, that's what they need, so I'm going to give them what they need. In the case of, for instance, in the case of being with a borderline, if you claim to be an empath and you really want to try and convince me that you're truly an empath, then you're going to say, you know what, the best thing I can do for this undiagnosed, untreated borderline is to leave the relationship. I know it's going to be horrible for them. They're going to take it so badly, and they're going to be so miserable, and they threaten to harm themselves and all kinds of other things, but what can I do? That is the best thing for them. As an empath, I can see and I can feel that the more that I try and help them, the worse they become. As an empath, the best thing for them is to leave them alone. Now, if you say you're an empath and that's your way of reacting and acting out of love, I'm going to believe you. If you tell me you're an empath and that's why you can't leave them, why you constantly can't resist the impulse to fix the broken puppy, the kitten, the helpless, like some, and the thing about codependence is that they're the angriest people. They're so angry. They're so angry. But in the beginning, one woman just went off on this comment about, because I was talking about codependence. And I wasn't anywhere near as harsh as I am now. And she was saying, she speaks up for those who can't speak for themselves. And how dare you mimic or mock those of us who give our lives for other people? It's like, oh my God, so angry. So I started off talking about the codependent. My initial desire was to talk about how the borderline doesn't know how to love. But I started talking about the codependent. So those of you who are getting on this channel because you think that's what I'm going to do, I'm going to start telling you how borderlines can't love, and you're right if you feel unloved, blah, 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 and you want to feel all puffed up about yourself that you're the only one that gives and you don't get anything in return. Nope, you don't know how to love either, because you don't understand that love is a healing action that comes from true empathy, which is looking for what the other person actually needs and what will benefit them regardless of how it makes you feel and regardless of how it makes them feel. If you're doing things to get a certain reaction out of them and make them feel better, that may be the right thing to do, but that doesn't mean it's coming from true empathy. It's coming from your need to feel better. And the way you feel better is by making other people feel better so you don't feel uncomfortable. Now, let's get to the borderline. Borderlines, as I said in the beginning of this, borderlines do love. So the question is, can borderlines truly love? Yes. If what we're talking about is having an intense feeling. In fact, the borderline probably has a much stronger feeling of love for you than you do for them. Why? Because borderlines, everything is turned up to, 1,000. So this little baby right here, this is my assistant, say hello to her. She feels love so badly for mom right now. Mom had to walk away for 30 seconds and little baby here is crying because she needs mom. She loves mom more than anything in the universe. Mom is everything. Mom is the universe. And she has such intense overriding love for mom that when mom turns around and leaves for 30 seconds, this is what happens. I remember. Do you remember ever being like misplaced in the store as a kid? I remember being, I don't know how old I was. I was older than that. I must have been 4 maybe, I think. Probably 4 years old, because I don't think I can remember beyond that. I remember being 4 years old. And now, looking back on it, that store, which no longer exists, but that store was a tiny store. It was tiny. It had like 3 or 4, aisles in it that were just, barely anything. And so mom was just right around the corner in the other aisle. And I turned around and mom wasn't there. And I dropped down and I started crying and I was all alone. I remember it was a horrible feeling. Mom left me. It's worse. You're just empty in the middle of the universe with nothing and nobody. So borderlines love. They love intensely. They feel love intensely. Now, does that mean that this little baby has the ability in the intensity of her feeling to actually take loving action? Probably not. Her actions are going to be rightly so. We wouldn't judge her for not being able to plan out your party for your next birthday, in 2 months. Not that borderlines can't do that, they can, but just giving you an example. But for her, we wouldn't judge her and say, why didn't you think ahead for my birthday? And why didn't you buy mom, well, she's a little baby. She can't think that. She's not even thinking beyond what's going to happen in the next 10 seconds. So borderlines are going to be less likely because, again, there's no one thing, all borderlines are different, blah, blah, blah. It's a spectrum, etc., etc. But if we're talking hardcore borderline personality disorder where their identity and their functional, base of operations is this, it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to consistently, regularly take that kind of loving action. Now, this little girl, when it comes to loving mom, if mom is not doing what she wants and if mom is not making her feel good, her feelings of love that were just 2 seconds ago absolutely overwhelming her, she was so filled with love and need, that will turn to rage, hate, and anger immediately. That's why borderlines split. That's not the whole reason why, but that's where they're coming from. They're emotionally arrested at whatever age, anywhere from 0 to 2 years of age. And that's how they function. So when you ask a borderline, when you say to borderlines that you don't love or you don't care, they're right in getting upset and saying, I do care. I said it to my borderline ex numerous times. Even in the beginning, I remember not even really meaning it. She was talking about something she had said or done, and I said, wow, that sounds really harsh. You really didn't care about that person's feelings. And she got upset. She said, of course I did. Of course I know. So, they're going to tell you that they love you. They're not going to tell you that they hate you. That's not their intention. But the narcissism, remember I said earlier about that codependence, that empaths really aren't empaths, they're actually narcissists. And I don't mean that in the technical sense. They're wrapped up in their narcissism. Their empathy is actually narcissism. Well, borderlines, as we know, are wrapped up in their narcissism. Little babies wrapped up in their narcissism. That's what makes them babies. Nothing wrong with that. We all have to have narcissism to be able to function. But when they say they love you, they don't have an awareness, or I shouldn't say they don't have an awareness, but the result of their actions is that they don't have an awareness of the effects of what's going to happen to the other person. So when I would say to my borderline ex that love isn't a feeling, love is an action, she would get confused because she, being an untreated, undiagnosed borderline, only knew her feelings. And if she had intense loving feelings, which she did, when she was in a happy place, she was amazing to be around. I mean, everybody loved being around her when she was in a good mood. She was the most loving and feeding everybody, cooking for everybody, making everybody happy and just being sweet and happy. And who didn't want to be around that? I mean, I remember in the beginning going, wow, she's so amazing. But she happened to be in a facade where she was getting a feedback of feeling good because she was being likable. And there's an honest, that little, when little babies are in a good mood and they're happy, they really do honestly like to be cute and fun and playful, and they mean all that. It's not that they don't mean it. But the question is whether or not she had the ability to go beyond her feeling, her narcissistic feeling in the moment, and go beyond that to have true empathy for me when she was devaluing me and destroying me in ways that seemed humanly impossible. She didn't have the ability to step out of herself and get inside of me and go, wow, if I was on the other end of this would be really painful. And, be able to deal with the impulse. So true love is when you have an impulse to do something based on your narcissism, which you do have, but you have the awareness to go, if I was on the other end of that, that would be painful, so I'm not going to do it. Or I'm going to do the opposite. And that, I think, is really what all therapy is all about. That's what all meditation is all about. If you want to talk about why meditation is so important, because meditation, is, and by the way, there's thousands of forms of meditation. So I'm just talking about the most common, prevalent stereotype, which is to have an empty mind where you watch your thoughts go by and you don't react and you don't respond and you don't buy into them. Doing that gives you the ability, when you're not meditating, to have an impulse, and having the discipline and the ability to either not act on that impulse or to do the exact opposite of that, which is probably the most beneficial side effect of the 12 steps. So before I get into it now, I have a three-pronged approach to get into a state of recovery. One is therapy. You've got to be in therapy with somebody who knows cluster B personality and codependence. So that's number one. Number two, go to coda.org. codependenceanonymous.org. Go do that now. You can stop the video now and go do that. That's more important than listening to me babble. And 3, daily spiritual practice. So, as I was saying, that's probably the most beneficial side effect of the 12 steps, which is the ability to do what they call taking contrary action. And that's just a fancy way of saying doing the exact opposite of what it is you really want to do right now. To be able to get out of your narcissism to the point where everything in you wants to pick up that phone and call your borderline, or everything in you wants to split and tell them to get out and throw a vase at their head, and instead you do the opposite. You do the opposite of what your impulse is telling you to do. That's one of the benefits of meditation, being able to watch your thoughts go by and go, that's not me, that's not me, and then be able to take an opposite approach. Now, that can turn into denial, by the way, so I'm just giving you an example. So the ultimate question is, can borderlines untreated, or borderlines who are in regression, by the way, just because a borderline gets into treatment, that's not a guarantee that they're going to get better or anything. Borderline personality disorder is extremely difficult to treat. I'm just telling you. And based on what I've seen, and based on my research and my interactions with borderlines whom I believe are in a state of recovery, the ones who are able to recover are the ones who are in therapy, like a lot of therapy, consistently for years, and they are very motivated to be honest with themselves. They have to be willing to be absolutely ruthless about being honest about their desires and what's going on the unconscious. That's why it takes years. Just because you go and sit in a therapist's office doesn't mean anything. And even if you've achieved some kind of recovery after years of therapy, you're still a borderline. That the core thing that broke within you when you were an infant has not fixed itself. And there is every possibility that you could, go into, you could regress. And it's a mental illness. So it's not like, somebody who had a traumatic experience where, their spouse died on them or something like that, which is incredibly traumatic. And they went through it and they processed the emotions and they worked through it and now they're better and now they, it's not like that. The core issue, this feeling right here, that unfortunately is never going to completely go away. So the only thing that they can do is learn how to manage the symptoms so that, and they can have a completely loving relationship if they have the ability to take contrary action, to the ability when they split, when they idealize, to go, wow, I'm doing it again, and what is the healthy action here? What is the constructive action? And to take action based on what they've learned on what they're supposed to do as opposed to whatever impulse is flying through them. I'll give you another example. This was somebody who, looking back on it, I believe was borderline. This was a relationship that almost happened but never did, and I met her only once in person, and then she, looking back on it, she split on me and devalued me, and it was thank God it didn't work out. And she wrote to me explaining why she did what she did, and she had this phrase which sounds really good, but when I read it, it was just so selfish and narcissistic. She said, "My simple truth is," like that means something. What that my simple truth meant was, my impulse, my feeling is that, and because you say it in the terms of my simple truth, I have to let it be that. My simple truth is that I wanted to slice you open and take your liver, and I really needed it, and that's my simple truth. And hey, don't judge me. You do you, and I'll do me. That's my simple truth. That was her borderline narcissism. So that is where the healing is. The healing is being able to on both sides. For the codependent, my simple truth is that I just feel totally attached to you, and I want you to love me more than anything else in the world, and I have to be your strength and your backbone, and that's my simple truth. No, it's not. That's your narcissistic impulse based on your self-reflected projection. That is not a kind thing to do. And if you get honest, if you go deep and get honest, you'll know that you've been running on selfishness the whole time. You know, early on, again, I made this in one of my videos. I said, when you realize what borderline personality disorder is, and you're the partner, when you realize that the person you thought you were with was fully adult, looking back at you, when you thought that they were having adult, mature responses and feelings, when their hypersexuality was something you thought was, wow, this is just a really conscious adult person who really likes to have a lot of sex. When you equated that with love, and you said they must really love me because, man, they want to have sex with me all the time. When I said, no, that's not what's happening here. What's happening is you've got somebody who has an extremely difficult, horrific internal experience as a result of going through some horrific trauma somewhere between the age of 0 to 2 months that broke them. They are constantly battling with this raging black hole of pain and misery and sadness and insecurity and all of that. And that when you realize that this adult that you think you're having a relationship is actually this, once you see that and you realize that you're trying to have a romantic and sexual relationship with that, what would you call that person? You know, now that's obviously not entirely accurate because there is an adult there. They just happen to have this one part of them that's regressed, which happens to be their identity. But for me, I had to realize that I actually was attracted to what I saw as the purity. Those little babies are just honest and pure. And there's just something so lovable about that. So desired. And who doesn't want to be with somebody who loves you completely from that state of purity and childish innocence and all of that? We want that. Except that it comes with this huge price, that in reality there's no maturity. What you want is for them to have the strength to be in that place of childish innocence and purity, and simultaneously having the adult, mature discipline and awareness that comes with only operating on the positive aspects of that, not operating on the precocious, changing of thoughts and feelings, at a moment's notice. So unfortunately, it's pretty hard to have both. The only people who end up like that, who love you with the innocence of a child and yet have the awareness and the maturity of an adult, is usually somebody who's very highly evolved. In any case, I forgot what I was saying here. But point is that you don't want to be in a relationship with that. You don't want to marry that. You don't want to have sex with that. There's nothing good going to come out of that. And if you can get honest that you were attracted to the part of the borderline that, is like a little kid, which actually makes you feel safe, like a kitten or a puppy. I keep using that same example because kittens and puppies, especially puppies, love you unconditionally. They love you with innocence and purity, and they love you unconditionally. They don't want anything back from you. They just want to love you and be there. As long as you feed them, they just love. And that's what we love about borderlines. When they love you, it's like that. There's just this incessant purity of love. And if I'm honest with myself, that's what I wanted. I wanted to benefit from that. I wanted that. And I even said that to her. This was later on in the relationship. And I said, what happened to, I didn't understand borderline personality disorder. I said, what happened to that first couple of weeks where you were just, cooking me food and massaging my feet and you were loving me all the time? I said, I want that person back. And she got really upset and started splitting. Oh, I know what you're up to now. And I said, what do you mean, what am I up to? I'm telling you the truth. That's how you were. She went, that's what we're looking for. But it's not love. It's selfish. So for both sides of the equation here, love is not what's happening in this deal. It's narcissism. It's childish projection. There's no empathy involved on either side. Let's just cut the bullshit. Neither side has empathy for the other. Because true empathy means that you know what the other person actually needs and you are willing to give them what they need regardless of how it affects you. That's true empathy. And love is being able to take an action, and I'll shut up with this and I'll take any questions if there are any. But for instance, let's just take generally speaking. So I'm speaking in generality so nobody get their panties in a bunch here. But generally speaking, in just a normal, quote, healthy relationships, women tend, and we're talking heterosexual relationships. So, generally speaking, women tend to fall in love quicker than men. They tend to operate on emotions more than men, and they want a commitment sooner than men, generally speaking. And they are the first to acknowledge their feelings and say, I love you. That's usually the case. Men have a very hard time committing. It takes them a long time to commit. It takes them a long time to say the L word, I love you. Now, the reason for that isn't because they don't have the same feelings as the women. They do. So ladies out there, if you're wondering why it takes men so long to commit and why, they drag their feet when it comes to marriage and commitment and saying, I love you and let's be exclusive. It's not because they don't have loving feelings for you. They probably have very strong loving feelings for you. In fact, they probably love you the way a little boy loves his mother, because every man is looking for his mother. It means that for them, love means responsibility. For a man to say, I love you, means I'm there for you, that I am responsible and I will be there when you need me. That means that they do things they don't want to do. They don't want to take out the garbage. They don't want to build something in the garage for you. They don't want to go shopping with you when you want to go buy some doilies for oh my God. They don't want to do any of that. But they do it because they love you. Not because it feels good or because they want to do it. So that is kind of encapsulates the difference between, what I'm trying to say here is that generally speaking, that when men love, they love with their actions. They prove their love through their actions. It has nothing to do with how they feel. Most of the time. So that's kind of a general understanding of, when it comes down to it, that's the kind of love you want. You want somebody who's going to do the things that make you happy, that are helpful for you, and that show commitment and show connection, and that create an ongoing safe environment for everybody to feel safe and loved. That's the kind of love you want. It's really nice to have the other kind where somebody has a squishy feeling and they tear up and they tell you they love you and they massage your feet or give you really good sex because it feels good in the moment for them to do that. That's great too. Ideally, you'd like to have both. But ultimately, the one that you want is the person who takes the loving action regardless of how they feel. And borderlines, because they are emotionally and psychologically regressed to this, that is what the mental illness part is. They cannot resist operating from their impulses. And so they only act on impulse. Even lots of times they'll have the awareness. And I know this from talking with borderlines that have been in recovery that they know lots of times what they're doing. They can't stop themselves. So they know that they're doing really harmful things and that they're destroying the relationship and that they're pushing you out to, protect themselves. They can consciously know that they're doing that and they can't stop. And so that's the opposite, where they know what it is that they're supposed to do, but they don't have the ability to follow through on that. You want the opposite. You want somebody who knows what they're supposed to do, and even when they don't want to do it, they do it anyway, because that is how they show you love. Because they know if they were in your position, that's what they would want you to do. All right? All right, so I'll see if there are any questions here. I prefer to deal with questions as opposed to your comments, and that's for your safety, because I'm an equal opportunity offender. I will offend everybody at some point, and I'm ruthless. I'm going to know if you have an unconscious agenda. So my promises to you are threefold. If you are passive aggressive, I'm going to tell you. If you are in denial, I'm going to tell you. If I think you need some education because there's something that you're missing here, I'm going to tell you. So you may not like what I have to say. If you're aggressive or abusive, I'm just going to block you. All right, let's see what we got here. So if you have a question, the best thing for me is if you write the word question, and then, especially in all caps, and then the rest in normal. Don't yell at me throughout the whole thing. And then I'll see if I'll be able to respond to you. Zena M says, hello, what if your sibling is BPD? I don't have a lot of experience with that. My only experience has been with dating a borderline. But I would say the same is true. If I had a sibling, by the way, I have no contact with my brother. My parents are both dead. My brother's, I don't know if he's BPD or not, but he's extremely abusive and screwed up and homeless and all that. And I haven't had any contact. I don't even know if he's alive, to tell you the truth. I know how horrible that sounds, but if my sibling had BPD, if they were toxic, I would go no contact. The thing about, borderlines is that they have to want to get better. If they don't want to get help, there's nothing in the world you can do for them. What would you do if an animal, and this is a bad comparison, but what would you do if a dog had rabies? You know that Old Yeller loves you if Old Yeller wasn't, sick with rabies, but Old Yeller's crazy. Old Yeller has rabies, and you better stay the hell away. So if your sibling is BPD, I would stay the hell away. I don't know what else to do. Zena says, how to deal with constant guilt tripping, blaming, and shaming when you can't leave the relationship. Well, Zena, I don't know why you can't leave. Are you under the age of 18? Because if you're 18, move out. If it's that you are in the family and you're forced to be there with them, then that's a difficult scenario. You need therapy. So I've already told you my three things. You need therapy. So you need to find a therapist who can deal with codependence. If you don't have any money, then I'll give it to you again. Go to coda.org. I'm sure that there's all kinds of advice you can get on how to deal with that. That's free. So if you're looking for the one thing I'm going to tell you that's going to fix the problem, that's impossible for me to do that. You need therapy. If you're living in a family where you have a borderline, you need therapy. And you need, I would recommend the 12 steps of CODA. So go do that. All right, Michael has a comment. That's not a question. Let's see here. I agree with this. Michael says self-labeling as empath is a form of grandiosity. Absolutely. It's a way of justifying your insecurity. I'm not a codependent. I'm an empath. Big red E on the chest with the cape flapping in the wind. Tear down one cheek. I'm not making this up. There's a thing on YouTube. Go look for it. There's a thing called the super empath, And there are videos where people talk about the super empath is going to rule the world and we're going to destroy the narcissist agenda. I mean, it's crazy. And then you go beyond the super empath, and then there's like the supernova empath, and it's just crazy. Literally crazy. We're talking, and you're right, absolute grandiosity, complete total delusion and denial. And you're right there. The thing is that the empath and the borderline are so close to each other. If you ever tried dealing with those super empaths, they are so demanding and they're so angry and they're such victims. And if you don't do what they want when they want you to do it, they're going to label you a narcissist. They live in a world where, there's just narcissists and empaths. There's just no difference. And if you don't do it, there have been people on the channel here who don't like my definition of codependent, which is that anybody who's been in a relationship with a borderline for more than 48 hours is by definition a codependent. And there were people that just absolutely didn't like, which is okay with me. You don't have to agree with me. I don't need that. But they wanted to argue with me, and their argument was that because I refused to accept their definition of codependent, that I was a narcissist. That in order to prove to them I wasn't a narcissist, I had to accept their definition. I mean, the irony and the projection is just so apparent to me. I hope everybody else can see it. I don't know what Zena is trying to say here. It's selfish. We want to feel worthy of having needs and being human. I don't know what that means. Empath is not an official psychology term. Yeah, that's true. Yep, you're just agreeing with me there. So Ghostbusters, Q. You go ahead and write out the word question. Don't you can do it. There's just a few extra letters. You can do it. Can they harm themselves in a bad way like suicide? Of course they can. What kind of question is that? What are you asking? You can't prevent them from doing anything. You can't prevent them. If I talk about, well, the truth is that some borderlines, there's a percentage of them that, do off themselves. So that's a very real thing, but that's not your problem. That's not your responsibility. Even if you chose to take on that responsibility, there's no guarantee that anything you do is going to prevent them from doing that, because what you do isn't fixing them anyway. You can't fix them. The pain that they are experiencing, there's nothing that you or any other human can do to alleviate that. Even though they think you're the problem. And that's part of their mental illness, is that they really do honestly think that you are making them feel bad. Even though you're not doing anything. You sneezed, you farted, you looked at your watch. You did something. And that was the worst possible thing anybody could have done to them in that moment. And you did it, and it's your fault. That's insanity. That's not true. So, yeah, of course they can. But the fact that you asked that question means that you need help. So Ghostbusters, you need to be in therapy. You need to go to coded.org, work the 12 steps, and you need to have well, you don't need to. That's my suggestion. Those are the three things that got me to the place where I'm at now. But your question definitely screams codependence. That you don't know where you stop and where they begin. And you've definitely taken on responsibility for their feelings, for their illness. You've taken responsibility for it. Anyway, I was going to say something else, but I'm not going to. All right, I don't see any other questions here. So if you do have a question, get one before it's too late. This link up here, keep checking back, because I am putting together a video series. The reason why I'm doing that is because people have asked me if I will counsel them. And I've decided against that for multiple reasons. One is I am not a therapist. And the only kind of counseling I would give would be the same kind of counseling that you would get from somebody in Codependence Anonymous, which is, you'd have a sponsor or somebody there to help. That's the kind of counseling I would give, and it has a real place, so don't get me wrong, but I don't want to charge money for that. And the other reason is because My experience is that codependence of borderlines, you carry a lot with you, and it's really draining. And I've already got my own spiritual counseling and my other stuff. I don't want to take that on. I don't have the time, and I don't think that I have the ability to wade through all of that. It's very intense. But in response to that, I've decided to put together a video series about this, how to work through this, and I go through some real specific things, and I talk about my experience of how the different levels of recovery, how it changes the brain. I'm sure I'll talk about things like why contrary action is really healing and how it changes the brain and your ability to create some healing within yourself. I'll talk to you about why a spiritual practice of your choosing, the effect that has on the brain, and all of the healing that goes involved. So I've really tried to make something that isn't the same as everything else. I'm not going to try and repeat what therapists say. I'm not going to try and repeat what CODA says. I'm going to try and give you a very specific, maybe reach some things that are specific. What I'm getting from people is that this channel fills a niche that they can't find anywhere else. So I'm going to try and keep doing that with this. I am going to charge for it. I haven't decided how much I'll charge for it, but it'll be really simple. You just click on a PayPal, and then I will email you links to the videos that you can watch and follow through. So now, if you want to, there is one borderline that you can fix, you can heal, and it takes 1 second. And you can see let me see, I'm going to make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. Oh, anyway, the little girl right here, the little borderline, you can see how much pain she's in. She is crying right there on the screen. She's crying because you haven't subscribed yet. So the moment that you subscribe and hit the bell button, she will magically be healed. She'll stop crying, and she will save all the borderlines in the world. So subscribe and hit the bell button, and then you won't have to go to bed thinking about the poor baby crying because I didn't subscribe. All right, now it looks like a couple of questions have come through. So I don't know, it looks like some Hebrew script there. Please write the word question so I know you're asking a question. Does BPD and NARC, and also do me a favor, write out whole words, everybody. If you were standing in front of me, you would say a whole word so I knew what you were talking about. It's okay, write out a whole word. I love actually reading whole words and sentences with punctuation and all that kind of stuff. Does a BPD and a narcissist see us CDP? What is CDP? Codependent. See, I didn't know what that means. Write out codependent. Does a BPD and a narcissist see us codependents the same? No. I have been with both BPD and narcissist, and it felt like I'm in the same place. All right, so those are two different things. Does it feel the same? Yes. Are the effects identical? Yes. Are the behaviors identical? Yes. Are their intentions the same? No. Do they see you the same? Not exactly. BPD and NPD come from the same root problem. So the same thing happened. Between the ages of 0 and 2, there was some trauma or neglect. By the way, neglect is horrible. I mean, that's, I think, the worst thing you can do. But probably neglect and or abuse between the ages of 0 and 2 broke them in such a way. And, the thing is, there are people who have been in loving families, who have been loved throughout their whole life, but there was something that happened. Mom, got put in jail or something for 3 or 4 days, and baby was by herself for 3 or 4 days. That's enough. That'll break them. They will never recover from that. I met somebody who had a sister who was adopted at, I think, 2 months of age. So you think, 2 months of age, well, there, we'll be able to fix whatever. And this is somebody that had been abandoned. So who knows how long that baby was, abandoned, sitting there in the street, abandoned. Who knows how long that happened? But that breaks you. That destroys the ability to create an identity. It's really horrible. So, when people say, we had a loving household and my sister's borderline, okay, what do you want me to do about that? That doesn't change the fact that something horrible happened to them somewhere. Somebody said they had a head injury. Well, okay, that's trauma. Something happened to create a trauma at that age, which creates borderline personality disorder. But the same thing happens with narcissists. Same kind of thing happens. I think narcissists, if I were to make an uneducated guess, which is all it is, I think there's outright physical abuse. I think that will create more of a narcissist. But borderlines and narcissists are fundamentally broken in the same way. The difference is that the borderlines, which tend to be more female than male, they tend to be more what I've been seen described as vulnerable narcissism. So it's narcissism, but it's vulnerable, meaning that they are more aware of their need and their feelings, and they don't have as sophisticated a defense mechanism. Whereas narcissists, which tend to be mostly male, which makes a lot of sense because males are more, left-brained and more disconnected from their feelings. Because when you're out on the battlefield, which is what testosterone is all about, you don't have time to shed a tear and have a feeling. You got to be a tough guy. You got to be disconnected from your feelings, or you'll get yourself or your partner killed. So men the testosterone changes the way that they create defense mechanisms. But the narcissist is so well defended that they're not aware of how needy they feel. They have a different reaction to it. So the narcissist sees you as an object. They see you as something to consume. And they have zero empathy for you. They only see you as something that they can consume and use for their own personal supply. And borderlines don't have that. Borderlines, if we're talking about somebody that's just straight borderline, which isn't always the case, we're talking about somebody who does love, if we're talking about the baby here, where'd she go? If we're talking about the little baby, the borderline can revert back to this more, quote, vulnerable or more honest experience of need and infantile love. Which is why, for me, they're so dangerous and so confusing. Now, a narcissist, I can see a narcissist coming. So I don't talk a lot about narcissists, like when I see videos on YouTube about when the narcissist says this, or here's the one thing you can do to, destroy a narcissist, or here's how to avoid the narcissist. It's like, just leave already. That's because I don't have, I'm kind of immune to narcissists, probably because alpha male testosterone in me, I see it coming, and but quiet borderlines, I'm a sucker for quiet borderlines. They just look like cute little sad puppies and kittens that if you just picked them up and loved them, it would all be okay. And I get pulled right into that. So you've been with both, and it felt like the same. It's because they are the same. When a borderline is splitting on you, they are a narcissist. They are absolutely wrapped up in themselves, and if they have any empathy for you, they have no ability to act on it. The thing about narcissists is that, like an NPD, their lying is so habitual. Their false bravado and everything, that is so habitual and that's so deeply ingrained that they may not even be able to know the need and the sadness that they have that drives them to do it. But if they do have an awareness of it, their need for self-defense is so strong that they'll never admit it, ever. Just a couple weeks ago, I was out surfing over here, and some guy, I don't know if he was coming off of meth or if he he definitely acted like a rageful borderline. That's exactly how he reminded me. But something was bugging him, and I was too close to him in the water or something like that, and he was like saying something, and I said, "What?" And then he said, "You get the hell away from me." And I'm like, "Dude, just relax. I'm not even thinking about you." Boom! He started going off and calling me all these horrible names, and he's gonna kick my ass, and if I ever see you, and I'm like, whatever, dude. And I went in, and he came chasing after me, threw his board down, and came at and said, "Come on, let's fight." I'm like, "Dude, I'm not gonna fight you. Calm down. I'm not going to fight you. What is your problem?" And then just the onslaught, the assault. And I tried to have a reasonable discussion with him, like, "Dude, I wasn't cutting you off. I wasn't anywhere near you. What is your serious problem here?" And it was like, after 2 seconds of that, you just know when somebody won't shut up. They just keep, the assault never stops. And there's, if you do anything, look at them, say anything that you do makes them continue to just assault you nonstop. So I saw that, and after about 5 seconds of realizing that this guy's not even going to stop to hear what I'm going to say, that no matter what I say, if he hears it, he's going to turn it around into a personal attack. I just shut up, and I just stared at him. I just waited for him to stop, and then he stopped and turned around. And as he's walking away, he's screaming at me from over his shoulder and threatening to slash my tires. And by that time, I realized I was dealing with, it just reminded me of a borderline. So when they're in that, there's no difference between them and a narcissist. Whether they know it or not, I think when it comes to narcissists, we'll never know. Because I think the core thing that separates narcissists from borderlines is narcissists are completely, totally incapable of any honesty. They cannot be honest. And I think they're incapable of any self-honesty. And that's because they are so wounded. The wound is so great that even to allow themselves to be honest for the slightest split second is worse than death. So they can't do it. Borderlines are just one step below that. So we're talking about the same thing. I like the definition of vulnerable narcissism, because that's what it is. They have the ability to love you and feel squishy towards you and all that other stuff. But the moment that you stop needing, meeting their needs, this comes out. And then they're horrific. And the one thing that narcissists and borderlines have in common is that the end result of being with a borderline or a narcissist is that when it's all said and done, which may take decades, 20, 30 years, when all is said and done, they will finally reduce you to feeling the way that they feel internally all the time. So I tell people, I've got a video on here. It says that if you date a borderline, they will discard you. You may have gone through discards and then hoovered back in, and that may have happened for years. I've gotten comments from people who, are obviously in relationships. This was early on, and this is what happens if you ever start like a YouTube channel. In the beginning is when you get the worst criticisms and attacks, and then they tend to calm down. So there was one guy on here who the mental health professional, he's a counselor, a licensed counselor. I don't know if he actually has a counselor himself, which I would strongly recommend. But he had some really dysfunctional interaction with me, and I ended up having to block him. And he said, "I don't like your channel. I don't like what you're doing. I am married to a borderline," and blah, 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 blah. And, and I wanted to say to him, "Yeah, how long have you been married? Talk to me in 20 years. Another guy came on and said, "Well, you just don't know how to love a borderline. Or maybe your borderline doesn't really love you. Mine really loves me. And so I just know exactly what to say and do in this situation and that situation. And because she really loves me. And maybe yours didn't really love you." And I wanted to say, yeah, talk to me in a year. The discard will come. It has to come. And there will be a final discard. And the final discard will be the worst possible devaluation you could have ever imagined. And it will feel as though they have planned it out. It will feel as though that each discard and hoover and discard and hoover is just simply a very intricate, absolutely brilliant strategy to get you to finally be the worst discarded place you can be, where you're just going to want to jump off a cliff and end your life. It will happen. So the same thing is the truth for the narcissist. The narcissist is doing that. The difference is the narcissist is planning it. The narcissist is consciously planning it out. The borderline, unless they have some comorbidity, is not consciously planning it out. And in fact, they are the slave of their disorder. They are being destroyed along with you, but they're gonna blame it on you. And the brilliance of it all is that they do what all people do. By the way, everybody in every relationship, regardless of your mental state, your mental health state, we all do this. True intimacy means that we want the other person to experience our deepest essence. This is why, like, if you for instance, like for me, like when I walk through the rainforest here, I'm here in Queensland, Australia, and I get to walk through the rainforests, next to the beach. It's amazingly beautiful. I think of the people, past and present, who are important to me, and I imagine having them with me because I want to share it with them. I want to share it with them because that is how I want to give them my experience. This is what we all do. If you are somebody that is healthy, quote unquote, you're full of love, you have self-confidence and self-love, you want to give that to somebody. So the end result of being, when you have two healthy people, and you see them when they're 80 years old and they're holding hands and this is my best friend and I can't imagine ever, it's because they had the ability through their intimacy to have the other person experience the best of what happens inside of them. The most true aspect of them. Your partner will feel that. When you're dating a borderline, what is going to happen eventually, your attempts to connect with them and have true intimacy will be successful. And the way you know it's successful is when they devalue you. They devalue you when your love actually hits home. Now, that's not the only time. Sometimes they devalue you because they had a feeling. They had a feeling of love, and it's so fast. They went from feeling loving to you to hating you because for them, love means rejection. So when they feel love towards you, their immediate knee-jerk response is to feel rejected. They just go immediately to feeling rejected by you. So that's why when you looked at your watch, it was the ultimate discard, that you discarded them, and they end up making you experience what they felt. They actually project onto you the discard physically, in reality, what they felt within inside of them. I can remember, again, with my borderline ex, there was one time I caught her in a discard. And she started saying, "Oh, I know what you're doing. I got this. You've been planning this out. I know exactly what." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Listen to yourself." All I said was the ice cream was melted or whatever. It was something like that. And you're now saying that I've been planning out your discard? Don't you remember you said that exact phrase to me yesterday? "Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, that's right." I caught her in mid-discard. But the last time, when the final discard came, she did that. She said, "I know what you're doing. You have been maliciously planning out, making me crazy. And you've been planning this out the whole time." And so they end up doing to you what they think you did to them. That's the genius of the disorder. The narcissist does it consciously. The borderline doesn't know they're doing it. They can't help it. But the end result is it feels exactly the same to you. So you're absolutely right. It feels exactly the same. And so you have to treat a borderline the same way you would treat a narcissist. And if you knew somebody was a narcissist, you would get out because you know They have no empathy for you. They're going to destroy you. They're only using you. And they're going to use you and destroy you and devalue you at the deepest level that can possibly happen. So you know that about a narcissist, so you leave. Borderlines, because they're in that middle ground where they're both at the same time, it's a lot harder because when they hoover you, they mean it most of the time. I'm not saying that there aren't times when they aren't manipulating you. They are very manipulative. But sometimes they absolutely mean it. I'm sorry I did that. I didn't mean to do that. I can see how horrible that was, and I wouldn't want that. And I swear to you, I won't do it again. And now, just this word triggers me, so don't say that. Instead of that, say this. And you go, okay. And now we're going to be okay. And I promise, and I love you so much. They mean it. They're not lying to you. They mean it. But the end result is that the disorder is going to do the same thing to them, and they're going to take it out on you. There's no hope. Unless they get therapy and unless they've been in therapy for years. And unless they are really serious about being honest about their internal experience and their internal motivations and their internal emotional reactions, unless they're willing to be ruthlessly honest with themselves and learn how to take contrary action, which takes time. You're not going to figure it out in a week. They're going to have to be doing that for years. They should not be in relationships for years. And only then are you going to be able to have a relationship with them. All right, what else? Roman Projaj, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Question, how to deal with love bombing experience. What do you mean how to deal with it? The only way that you're in a love bombing experience is if you're choosing to be with a borderline. The way to deal with a love bombing experience is don't be with a borderline. If you know you're being love bombed, it's time to go, maybe this isn't a good idea. I think I'm not going to date this person. What do you mean how to deal with it? All right, so you're in it. You've been love bombed. What do you want? What are you saying? Let me see. Is it possible in a healthy relationship experience something better? You mean, is it possible to have somebody love you and have it not mean they're going to destroy you? Yes. But there's a difference between a BPD and NPD love bombing and an actual person who loves you. Don't get me wrong, the BPD loves you as well. The difference between is one is healthy love and one is not. Love bombing is idealization. So they're love bombing you not because they have said to themselves on a conscious, fully, deeply aware, mature way, wow, this is a really amazing person. And you know what? I want them to feel good. So I'm going to go bake them a cake. And here, I hope you enjoy this. I love you. Right? Now, borderline can do that and be love bombing, but their motivation isn't because they've seen you. Their motivation is because they have projected onto you mommy or daddy. So they want mommy or daddy's love. And that's different. It's superficial. The difference is the person who has depth and loves from true empathy, when they give you a gift, they don't take it back. They gave you a gift. They may want you to appreciate it, but they gave you a gift and they don't take it back. Borderlines take it back. They love you one day and they hate you the next. So that's the difference. It's not love bombing. Love bombing is a phrase that has to do with somebody who is idealizing you, which is it's superficial. It doesn't have any depth to it. Because if it was real, it lasts. You know that it's superficial if it doesn't last. So borderlines, you want to know the difference? When that intense feeling of love that you have, because here's something else, borderlines will always see everybody as their parent. So that means your intense feelings of love, you need to know that while it's okay to have them, you need to understand that they're superficial. They're not coming from any real deep place of awareness. And as you know, they could vanish in an instant. And so if you're only operating from your feelings and you know that I love you now, but now you looked at me wrong and I hate you, so I feel justified in walking away from you, then you never really loved them. Love bombing isn't love. It's children giggle and all that because they're happy, but they also do it to elicit the love. They're trying to get something from you. Okay, so you're asking me, Roman, it's sad that you asked this question, and I mean that. I feel sorry for you. It means that you don't know what being loved is, that you've only had superficial, toxic, loving experiences. You don't know what it's like for somebody to love you and mean it. Because when they love you, they say they love you on Wednesday, they still love you on Friday. And Thursday and early Friday morning, you were in a bad mood and you were a real asshole. They still love you. Their love isn't conditional. It's not truly unconditional, but they can hang on to it. And they'll say, I don't feel bad for giving you that, but you need to apologize. You said this and this and it hurt my feelings. And you go, I'm sorry. And they go, that's okay, I love you. I'm here. I was just watching something on Netflix, and I won't get into it, but the guy was, he was talking with his wife, and he had to go do some really dangerous thing. And it really messes with him, and she'd never seen him like that. And he says, if I go off and do this thing, I'm not going to be the same when I come back. And she says, that's okay, I will. Means that she's not going to change. Her love has depth to it. So as you say, you've always had BPD partners. I didn't know that they were BPD at the start. Well, you don't know that you're chronically codependent. So I know, Roman, that you have said you can't find therapy in your area, but have you gone here? Please stop making excuses. Go get a sponsor. Go to CODA and work the 12 steps and get a sponsor. Please stop making excuses. You can heal, but you need help. It's going to take time. I don't recommend you going into a relationship. If the only relationships you know how to get into are with borderlines, you need to know how to love yourself enough so that you don't attract borderlines anymore. That's going to take time and work. Okay, Lee Cully, Q, which again, go ahead and write the word question. I believe you can do it. My ex always had told me she would never cheat, as she was a product of cheating and despised her father for it. She cheated on me and left me for a married man. Is this BPD trait or NPD? I have no idea. You don't have to be a borderline or a narcissist to cheat. I mean, yes, that if somebody said, yeah, I dated a borderline or a narcissist and they did that, that would be a typical thing. But that doesn't mean that they're borderline just because they did that. There are all kinds of assholes out there who do all kinds of shitty things, and it doesn't mean they have BPD or NPD. It just means that they're selfish. And it doesn't mean they can't change. The ruminator, quiet BPD, is that a question? That's not a question. Barabbas Barjona, I have followed your link to your video, to your YouTube, what do you call it? So I know you're a fake YouTube channel, and I believe I know who you are, and I think I know what you're doing. So just know that every time you come on here with a fake channel, guess what happens? I get to block you. Bye-bye. Lee Cully, that's not a question. Day Lauf, that's not a question. Ruminator, that's not a question. SD, that's not a question either. Michael Winkler, one thing that has helped me was the realization that my BPD mother and lots of BPD girlfriend experiences was like a very hard training in being considerate. Non-BPD partners enjoy this training now. Okay, I don't know what that means, but sounds great. I'm glad that worked. SD, I wonder how much truly they can recover if they go to therapy. I just doubt it. Well, I'm not an expert in that. I will tell you that I absolutely believe that borderline personality disorder is a mental illness. And as I said, it's not, somebody who's been through some tragic experience that they can heal from and recover from. So the actual disorder is never going to go away. in my opinion. But I do believe that it is possible for borderlines to get into therapy and to learn how to manage their responses. Now, I've seen it written that they can manage their symptoms. I'm not sure they can manage their symptoms. Because what is the symptom? The symptom is splitting. It's the internal experience of I love you, I hate you. You looked at your watch. I can't stand being around you right now. You're going to leave me, so I have to leave you first. Oh, I can't believe you're doing this to me. You've been spending the last 10 years planning out my demise because you farted. You know, that's never going to go away. The impulse, maybe the impulse will lessen, but I think it's like, you know, I think it has a similarity to other things like alcoholism and drug addiction, which never go away. You know, alcoholics never completely are cured. They always have the physical response to alcohol, and they also have the emotional issues inside of them that at some point can trigger them to drink and kill themselves. You know, there's no shortage of alcoholics who have been sober for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and then die drunk. So I believe absolutely that borderlines can be regressed, and it'll be as though they never stopped. I think they can also, you know, lose a rational grasp. You know, they can have regression, you know, where they can have, I don't know what the word is, but, you know, where they regress and they lose their sanity. And, you know, they can have an episode or whatever. Absolutely, I think that's possible. So, you know, I agree with you. Can they be cured? I don't think that's possible. So I would, you know, anybody who claims to be a cured borderline, it shows a lack of awareness, and it's, you know, because the denial can kick in at any point. But if they, like similar to alcoholics and drug addicts, if they do on a regular basis continue to do the things that they need to keep their impulses in a place where they can act contrary to their impulses, I believe that that's possible. I do believe that it's possible for borderlines to be able to be in loving relationships, and while their BPD will be going off at whatever level inside of them, they will have the tools, they will have the awareness to go, that's my BPD. And right now what I want to do is I want to accuse this person of doing something horrible, or I want to end the marriage or whatever. Instead of that, I'm going to kiss them on the cheek and tell them I love them. Or, you know, in one case, I've heard one say that she has to tell her husband, I believe, that he has to leave the house because she's having an episode, or whatever word she used. She needs alone time, or she's having a, you know, whatever. I forget what she calls it. She has a word for it or a phrase for it, which he knows, and he goes, she's having an episode, she's splitting, and so he leaves. Now, what's actually really healthy about that is that her impulse would be to keep him there and to do something horrible to him. So she would want him to fix her in some way. And when a borderline is splitting, what they're really wanting is they're wanting you to fix them. And that's the only way they know how to get you to fix them, is to push you away. They actually really want you to come and take care of them, which is really screwed up. So she has come to the awareness that she's the only one that can fix herself. And so she's not going to put that on him, but she's also aware that she can't control the feeling to the extent where she can just, you know, act completely contrary. So she asks him, can you please leave for the afternoon? And she goes and takes care of herself and does what she's been taught to do. That, you know, if I knew that, like if somebody were to ask me, would you ever date a borderline? I would have to be convinced that somebody had that kind of mechanism. I don't know that I would want that. The other thing is who wants to do that? That's a lot of work. You know, it's really hard to do when you're in love and you're married, to have, you know, to get up and leave the house for 6 hours or whatever because your wife or your husband is having a real problem. But, you know, if you truly love somebody, and that's what they have to do, then you do whatever you have to do. And if the end result of that is that after she spends those few hours loving herself and taking care of herself, is that she gets over it, she learns how to fix herself and or manage it so that when he comes back she can love him, then that is love, because love is taking an action in a consistent manner regardless of how you feel. It's taking loving action. And if that's what she has to do to stay in the relationship, then that is an extremely healthy, loving action. And I do believe that, if that is true, if what she says is true, and if she's able to continue that for the rest of her life, then the answer would be that yes, borderlines can recover, if recover means having the ability to act in a loving fashion consistently and progressively. And probably over time, I would imagine that the impulses would feel as though they're lessening inside of her. Doesn't mean they can't be triggered. Again, like an alcoholic. Their alcoholic in recovery can go for long periods where they feel really good. They're working the steps and they're blah, blah, blah. And then something will happen and then they have to go back and really do their work to stay in recovery. I'm pretty sure it's the same kind of dynamic. But I agree with you. Just because somebody says that they're borderline and they've been in recovery for 6 months, I would stay away. I would only date one that had been in recovery for years. And then I would really take my time to get to know them. Because for me, it's still so fresh, I wouldn't do it. Just because I know that the likelihood is pretty slim. But, that's just me. Let's see, what else? Lee Cully question, can borderlines that are quiet develop into more malicious, angry borderlines? Hell yes. I watched it happen in front of me. Here's the thing, and this was explained to me by a borderline, is that all borderlines are pretty much the same. Their internal reality and response is exactly the same. They go from loving you to hating you. The difference is whether or not they have the ability to manage their impulse. So in a strange way, a quiet borderline is somebody who's actually done a tiny bit of work and they can manage their impulses. Now, my quiet borderline, what she would do, and I watched her do it once, she split on me once. For the first time that she really split on me, it was malicious. She screamed at me in a restaurant out of nowhere and said, "Don't look at me like that," and got up and left me in the restaurant with the whole restaurant looking at me like, what the hell was that all about? And I had to pay the bill, and here's the full drink that she had, and that I had just bought. I had to go buy the drink that she wasn't going to drink, and it was really embarrassing. And then other times she would just say, this isn't going to work, or I'd get a phone call and she'd very rationally explain to me that she couldn't be with me anymore because she had a bad dream and she just has a bad feeling and can't be with me. And to be honest, that was as honest as she could be. She wasn't raging at me or calling me names. It was still devaluing because all she had was a bad dream. Really? You only love me this much, that all you had was a bad dream and that's all it took? I have bad dreams too. That doesn't mean I leave people just because I have a bad dream. Or I have a bad feeling and I'm scared so I can't be with you. To her credit, she was really honest about her feelings. She didn't, call me all kinds of horrible names and justify it. She just did horrible things and was honest about it. And then, but the last time was really malicious. So yeah, they're exactly the same. It's just whether or not they've learned and or been trained to stuff the feelings down inside. So a quiet borderline can rage by ghosting you. They'll just disappear. They won't answer their phone for a week. They won't say anything to you and they'll go off and cheat on you. They'll lock themselves. Mine would do this on a daily basis. Mine would lock herself in her room and meditate for 3 hours. That was splitting, and that was rage. That is just as rageful as, taking out a knife and stabbing you. It's the exact same feeling. It's the exact same impulse. So yeah, it is the same. And they can, just because somebody has taught themselves to, stuff their feelings down or to, be passive aggressive in their raging doesn't mean that they can't be stimulated to the point where they do rage. My borderline ex said that she used to rage and she taught herself not to do it. So, I hope that answers your question. Michael Winkler question. Are you familiar with the spiritual tool of the... No, I'm not. I'm not familiar with it, so I can't talk about anything I don't know. Anyway, no more questions. Nope, no more questions. All right, so that's it for me, guys. So I don't know. I can't read Hebrew. So if you're going to ask a question, and I'm going to ask that you ask it honestly. I haven't read this yet, but it looks like it's a passive-aggressive question, but let's see. So now after we know so much, who said you know so much? I didn't say you know so much. Where did you come to that conclusion? So now after we know so much, after we have learned so much, and we are not in this horror places anymore, why does it still hurt? Because you don't know as much as you think you know. Shouldn't we be happy now? So happy? You need help. The reason why you're still in pain is because you haven't dealt with the underlying codependence. So if you have been in a relationship with a borderline, it means that in your childhood, you were programmed codependent. You are a codependent. You needed to find a borderline to help you bring to your conscious experience your unconscious, unresolved codependent pain. You need therapy. So the reason why you're in pain is because you haven't healed. And you haven't healed because you've been broken this whole time. You just think I was doing fine and then I met this borderline and then now everything went crazy. No, all that happened was that the borderline stimulated within you what was already there and brought it to the surface and then feasted on it. But you've been this way your whole life. You need help. You need therapy, you need coda, and you need a spiritual practice. And then you can stop feeling sorry for yourself. Shouldn't we be happy now? So happy? No, because your disease is your codependence. It's been with you this whole time. So go get some help. Mustafa Khalife, question. I've been with one for 9 weeks, mean a borderline, and decided to enter no contact 6 weeks after I left her. Can you give advices on no contact and how to not get drawn into hoovering? I am in therapy, by the way. Well, that would have been my first response, is that you need therapy because, going no contact, what kind of advice is there? Going no contact is going no contact. What you really want to know is, I need advice because I can't stay no contact. Listen, I'm no different than any of you guys. I went no contact after, when I got discarded. And thankfully, I had the excuse because I had laid down the boundary that I can't be in your life unless you go to therapy for borderline personality disorder. She said, I'm refusing to do that. You're horrible. You're trying to make me insane and you need to leave me. And after I finally was able to accept that, it took me 2 weeks. I've talked about it before, but it took me 2 weeks. And then I went back and I said, I just need some closure, which of course you can never get. And that's when she showed me her true colors. I saw her in her truest form. She was really in a bad spot. And she was just not at all coherent. And I went, whoa, this person has a serious mental disorder. She's not just disturbed. She's got a mental disorder. And then I went no contact, which meant I blocked her on my phone. I blocked her on Facebook. I blocked her on email, which of course, nothing's impossible. She still could have found ways to get around some of those. But that's what I did. So going no contact is going no contact. It's not hard to figure out. What's hard to figure out is, can you stay that way? Now, as after I had gone no contact, weeks later, months later, I wonder what's going on with her. And I'd unblock her, Facebook, just so I could, see her picture and who is she with, and and then I'd pretend like, oh, I'll block her later, but unconsciously I'm like, I hope she emails me. So I thankfully she didn't, and then I went, what am I doing? And I blocked it, and I've been no contact. I don't know for how long. I mean, I've been no contact ever since then, a long time ago. But in terms of me keeping everything blocked, I don't know how long it's been. So the question is, can you resist your addiction to staying available to them? You're like, she called me. What was I going to do? No contact means no contact. So you're in therapy, so you're doing it. How to not get drawn into hoovering is to fix you. You have to look at it like an illness. You have to look at it like, an addiction. No different no different, because the same chemicals in the brain get released. When you talk to them, when they hoover you. I remember the first discard, and she had broken up with me, and 2 weeks went by, and my phone, and of course I was thinking about her every day, and I had told myself, if she calls me, I'm going to tell her it's not going to work out. And then I go, no, if she calls me, I'm just not going to answer. Phone rings, and as I'm saying, I'm not going to answer. Hello? Okay, yeah, when do you want to meet? You're addicted. So there's no way, if you're asking me how to get rid of the feeling, you may not be able to get rid of the feeling, but you're going to have to learn, how to take care of yourself. If you're in therapy and you have a therapist that you can call in emergencies, when you're wanting to unblock your phone, you call your therapist. But I'm willing to bet you're in therapy, but you're not in CODA, right? So Codependence Anonymous, you have friends. You have people that you have phone numbers, and you can call anytime and say, hey, I'm wanting to call my ex. And they will talk you out of it, and you'll be able to fulfill the impulse of picking up the phone and wanting to call somebody. But instead of calling your ex, you'll call somebody who will help you talk you down. So that's one of the great things of CODA. So you should be in CODA. If you need help and you're in therapy and it's not enough to keep you from feeling like you can't be, that you're going to get hoovered, you need that. It's a support group. Therapists are great, but they're not available 24/7. Q. So do me a favor, write the word question. You say, after breakup with BPD, did they suffer? I don't know. Did they? What does it matter? They suffer when they're with you, and they suffer when you're not there. So why are you talking about them? You need help. You are seriously codependent. The kindest thing you can do for them is to, when you break up with them, if they suffer, that's a good thing, because that suffering may lead them to go and getting help. As long as you're with them, you're relieving their suffering, you are preventing them from seeking the help that they need. The kindest thing you can do is take whatever action is going to put them in the greatest need, because then they might go get help. But if they suffer and they're not ready to get help, guess what, Q? They're going to find somebody else. You're not that important. They can find somebody tomorrow. What makes you think you're so important that you breaking up with them is going to make them suffer? They're going to suffer as long as they're willing to, they're going to go find whatever they need. You're the one that's suffering. Can they harm themselves? Of course they can. So what? It's not your responsibility. Just because you left them, if they choose to harm themselves, that's their problem. Why do you feel responsible? You need help. You are seriously codependent. You need therapy. If you don't want to get a therapist, go to CODA. Go get help. Let's see, what else? Lee Cully, question, does the BPD break you down over time to accept the rages? Okay, so punctuation is a really good thing. So I know when one sentence ends and another one starts. So I'm going to have to choose to put my punctuation here so I can make sense out of this. Does the BPD break you down over time to accept the rages? Question mark. Yes. Next sentence, capital I. It was not there at the start of the relationship, comma. In the end, I was numb to this, period. I had friends question me why I put up with it. All right, so there's only one question in there, which is, does the BPD break you down over time to accept the rages? Yes. I don't know how else to say that. Yes. So as a codependent, you were programmed as a kid. You were programmed as a kid to not only fix. Now you think, well, I've been programmed to fix others. I'm an empath. I don't know if you've identified that way. I'm an empath and I'm here and I feel for people and I want to help them. You think that's what it is. No, I just can't resist because she needs help and she hoovers me back and I need to help her. And you think that's why you're doing it. And that's why you keep going back for more punishment. And punishment, I mean that literally. They punish you for loving them. What's actually going on is that you were trained as a kid to actually take on irrational guilt for other people's abuse. You were trained not only to take the abuse, but to actually feel responsible for it. So when the borderline does something out of, which may not have anything to do with you. For instance, this is a good example. My brother made himself very sick because of stress. He blamed it on me. He said because of something I had done 10 years earlier that made him feel bad, which I didn't do, by the way, that caused him so much stress that 10 years later it was a debilitating disease and it was my fault. Now, I had been trained by my brother, by my parents to do that, to feel guilty when they did something crazy and abusive either to themselves or to me. So the reason why you ask this question is because, yes, they rage at you and they make you feel responsible, or they try to make you feel responsible, and you choose to accept that. And you not only choose to accept that, on an unconscious level, you feel that your job in this world is to take on the irrational guilt of other people. So you seek out somebody that will not only abuse you, but then blame you for it. You're not just there to be abused, you're there to be abused and take responsibility. So your friends are absolutely right. Which is, let's see, what did you say? That my friends question me why I put up with it. It's because your friends haven't been programmed to put up with it. So to them, it's really insane. For them, if somebody did it to them once, they'd be like, screw you, I'm out of here. Not only did you keep coming back, but on an unconscious level, it made you love her even more. Oh my God, she's going to abuse me and make me feel guilty for it? Oh my God, more, bring it on. Now I know you really love me, because that's how you were taught as a kid. You were taught that that was your worth. Your value came from taking on the guilt, the irrational guilt of other people. So you need help. Did you say you were in therapy? Was that you? If you were, then good. Stay in therapy. If not, get the hell in therapy. Do you see this, guys? We can't fix ourselves. We need help. If you're a codependent, you need help. All right. And look, he apologizes. Stop apologizing. Mustafa Khalife. Question. Is that a question? Mike is right. That is not a question. That's a statement. I fully agree with it, but that's not a question. That's not a question. If you got a question, actual question. So don't manipulate me by, writing the word question, because then you got me to then, allow you to pat me on the back. You kissed my ass and now I like you for half a second. Question. Mike is right about the codependency. It's not a question. Codependence. Mustafa Khalif, actual question. How long does it take to recover from codependency? What do you want? Do you want a time frame, a week, a year? Probably your entire life. You're never going to stop being codependent. You might get better at it. I mean, I'll say that there is a difference between codependence and borderline personality disorder in that borderline personality disorder, there's never going to be a cure. It's never going to go away. Mustafa Khalif, depending on how intense your codependence is, depending on how honest you are about wanting to look at your own selfishness, that's the bottom line here, because codependents are selfish also. Now, when I tell you that now, I know that you're hearing it wrong. But when you can get to the point where, like in Coda, if you're not in Coda, just coda.org, just go there. And get on the first Zoom meeting you can. When you do the fourth step, you're going to find out that you actually have a lot of anger and resentment and a lot of expectations on people you think that you're giving unconditional love to. And the more willing you are to be honest about how you have expectations surrounding your giving to others, then you can heal. And the more that you're willing to look at that, the more ability you'll have to actually be able to move past that. I am in a state of recovery. And so if you don't actually have the physical, actual, whatever goes on in the brains of borderlines, then you can actually get some measure of healing. Having said that, I have also seen codependents that never recover. They never ever get past the victim mentality. They never ever get past, I mean, there's a couple that I know. There's one in particular that's just never gets past. I mean, I only know one way to recover, and that's to be ruthless with myself. That means I have to be ruthless about my own desires and my own impulses and my own, I have to be willing to be completely honest about the selfishness that I carry around with me. There's nothing wrong with being selfish if you're conscious of it. Like I said, having great sex is really good when both people are really selfish and they're both being selfish in the way that actually makes the other person feel better. There's nothing better than that. So there's nothing wrong with being selfish. The problem is not being aware of it. And that's why I make so much fun of empaths, because they claim, I'm just here for them, and if I'm loving them unconditionally, why do they do that? I know for a fact you're not loving them unconditionally. You want something from them. Stop bullshitting me. God, that's so annoying. Of course the borderline gives you a hard time because you whine and complain and nah. I did it because, it's... Anyway. How long will it take? I have no idea. It doesn't matter. You only have today. So just go get some help. You'll know when you figure it out. When you figure out how long it takes, let me know. I haven't gotten completely recovered yet. I don't think I ever will. I'm in a state of recovery. I currently am bulletproof against borderlines, but that's only because I'm in a state of recovery, which I maintain on a daily basis. If the right one comes along, I could end up, back where I was yesterday. So there's no guarantee either. Mariano Atan Morena, ex-BPD partner. Okay, so you're somebody who was a partner of a borderline and you're now out of that relationship. Question. Hi, Mike. How much this experience has increased your spiritual inner awareness and strength? A lot. I mean, look at what's happening on the channel. I've got a much deeper awareness of how important it is to have an identity. And, it's really fueled my other channel and my other teachings, my other spiritual teachings, to really understand what true consciousness is. And I'll give you my definition of enlightenment. Spiritual enlightenment is this: having all of your feelings, no matter how good or how bad, no matter how selfless, no matter how selfish, Having all of your feelings, accepting and living and experiencing all of your thoughts, your feelings, and your impulses, and yet having the consciousness to know how to take constructive action. That's enlightenment, period. It's really important that we have all of our feelings. You know, Mustafa doesn't realize it, but, or was that Mustafa? Who was asking me how, yeah, Mustafa, when he says, how long does it take to recover? What he really wants to know is, when will I stop feeling this way? Now, I can tell you that the feelings may not ever go away. And being human means having really messed up feelings a lot of the time. So I would first say, stop trying to change your feelings. The good news is, if you take contrary action, those actions can sometimes create feelings and create good feelings. One example is go to the gym. You know, I always feel better when I go to the gym. Maybe not while I'm underneath a big amount of weight and I feel like, you know, I'm going to puke because the weight is too heavy or whatever it is. I may not feel good then. I may not feel good the next 2 days as I'm super sore and I can't walk around. But eventually, after that, my body feels stronger. I have better blah, 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 better immunity from illness. So actions will result in feelings. But if you're walking around with a feeling and you want to make the feeling go away, that's called denial, and that's extremely destructive. It's actually self-violence. When you want to get rid of your feeling, what you're really wanting to do is to kill yourself. It's suicide. Wanting to have a feeling go away is you know, like a sadness or pain. If you loved somebody and they were in pain, you would take them and you'd say, it's okay, cry it out. I'm here. You would let them have their feelings. So if somebody didn't let you have your feelings, then your first response will be to kill the feeling the moment that it comes up. So part of enlightenment is being aware of, wow, I'm in a lot of pain. And listen, I'm learning it too. But, you know, when the pain comes up, I'll sit myself down and I'll say, Mike, I'm really sorry that you're going through this. This is really painful. You know, if it's somebody did something abusive to me, you know, I talked about the guy out in the water, that really messed with me. I had to sit myself down and go, you know, first it was so interesting that the trauma of it, the timeline shifted in my mind where I actually made it out that I had provoked the guy in my mind. And I went, that never happened. I did nothing to provoke that from that guy. That was my old training because my parents and my siblings had taught me to train myself to feel as though it had been my fault the whole time. So when I had that, I had to sit myself down and say, hey, Mike, it's okay that you feel really sad. That was really mean what that guy did to you. You know, it's hard for a big tough guy like me to do that, you know. But no, the worst part, I wasn't afraid of him. I mean, truth is, I'm not, it takes a lot, you know, you got to be pretty big and pretty scary to scare me, but he didn't scare me all that much, but he really hurt my feelings a lot. And I had to sit myself down. It reminded me of when I was a little kid. And, you know, when I was a kid, I was like the shortest kid in school, and I used to get picked on by everybody. I mean, all the time. My brother used to beat the crap out of me, and then all the local kids used to beat me up and steal my clothes and, you know, off the beach. It was horrible. So it really traumatized me. So I sat myself down and I said, Mike, you didn't deserve that. It's really sad that that guy didn't say something nice to you, because you would have loved to have been his friend. You would have wanted to paddle out and shake his hand and say, hey, my name's Mike, and you know, how long have you been surfing here? And yeah, wasn't it great yesterday? And how sad that he didn't want to get to know you, that he didn't want to be your friend. You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve to have somebody treat you like that. That's having all of your feelings. Sitting down with yourself in the deepest pain, in the deepest shame, and to take care of yourself, to love yourself. That's having all of your feelings. So the question of when am I going to stop having this feeling, that's like taking yourself and punching you in the face going, stop feeling that, stop it, stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about. Be kind to yourself. Let yourself have every feeling. You're feeling murderously rageful? Have it. Go, of course you feel that way. She just cheated on you with your neighbor. Oh my God, that's horrible. Of course you're feeling homicidally rageful. Who wouldn't feel that way? Don't have to act on it, but you let yourself have all of your feelings. I mean, isn't this just common sense? You know, this is what we wanted from our parents. They couldn't give it to us, so we have to give it to ourselves. This is borderlines too. I mean, borderlines listening, this is the same advice for you. You know, when you want to split on somebody, and you know, instead of splitting on the person who's loving you, you know, maybe you need to say, I need a few minutes, and go and shut the door and go, my parents rejected me and didn't love me, and that's really sad. This person out there loves me and they're not doing it to me, and it's okay that I feel sad. It's okay that I feel like splitting on this person. It's not their fault, but it's okay that I feel this way because look what happened to me. We can learn to identify it within ourselves. Again, I don't know anything about borderlines. I have no idea if they could even do that, if that will work, but that's the kind of stuff I do with myself. What else? No more questions? All right, that's it. All right, so no more questions. So I've been on for a while now. It's been a long time. How long have I been on? 2 hours. All right, so I'll stop babbling. freedom.spirittao.com. Just keep your eyes open. I promise there will be something there. Keep checking. Make the little borderline healed. Go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell button. And that's it. I'll see you guys very soon. Let me see. Where's my... That's me surfing. All right. I'm looking for my end screen, which is... I have so many of them. There it is. See you guys later. All right, you get one at the last minute. Let me see if Mustafa, if I should answer this question. Mustafa, you need some help. Impatience, you're minimizing what's happening to you. You think if you can just be patient, he says, is impatience also a factor for falling for borderlines? No. If that's all it was, then everybody'd fall for borderlines. You're minimizing what's going on. You need real help. Mine threatened with harming herself and did it. And that is just hardcore manipulation. That's her fault. I know it's hard, but so what? That's an insane thing to do, and it's her fault. And it's abusive. You have the right to do whatever you want. She didn't make you feel guilty. You chose to feel guilty. You need an answer. Get some help. How many times do I need to say it? Go to therapy. You don't want to go to therapy? Go to CODA. You can do that right now. Right now, you can go to coda.org. If you don't do that, I won't have any sympathy for you. Go take care of yourself. All right, that's it. Now I really am out of here. No matter how many questions come in at the last moment. And I'm looking for my end screen, which is right here. Okay, bye.